The prayer that changed a nation. When a broken heart moved heaven. What happens when a woman's deepest pain becomes her greatest purpose? This is the story of Peninnah, a woman who couldn't have children in a time when that meant everything. Year after year, she watched others celebrate while her arms remained empty. But one day, in the quietest corner of an ancient temple, she whispered a prayer so powerful that it didn't just give her a son, it gave an entire nation a prophet. This is about the moment when surrender became strength, when tears became triumph, and when one broken heart moved the very hand of God. Stay with me because what you're about to hear will remind you that your prayers are never wasted and your pain is never without purpose. The sun was beginning its slow descent over the hills of Shiloh, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. Light poured over the ancient stones of the sanctuary like liquid honey, warming everything it touched. It was the day of the annual sacrifice, and from every corner of the land, families arrived carrying their offerings and their hopes. Among the crowds of joyful voices and eager children, there walked a woman whose steps were quiet and whose eyes carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken prayers. Her name was Peninnah. She walked beside her husband, a man named Elkanah. He was kind, gentle, a man who loved her with every fiber of his being. He would look at her with such tenderness, trying desperately to heal a wound he could not see. But Peninnah carried something inside her chest that no amount of love could fix. It was a grief that had taken root years ago and had grown deeper with each passing season. While other women cradled babies against their hearts, Peninnah's arms remained achingly empty. In a world where a woman's worth was measured by the children she bore, Peninnah felt invisible, forgotten, less than. And if that pain wasn't enough, there was another woman in her life who made sure Peninnah never forgot her sorrow. Peninnah was Elkanah's other wife, and she had many children. Her home echoed with laughter and tiny footsteps, and she made certain that Peninnah knew the difference between them. Peninnah's words were wrapped in false sweetness, but they cut like daggers. Every comment, every sideways glance was designed to remind Peninnah of what she didn't have. It was a cruelty that happened in whispers, in smiles that didn't reach the eyes, in the way she would parade her blessings as if they were weapons. But even in the midst of all that darkness, something inside Peninnah refused to die. There was a flame, small and flickering, but it would not go out. She believed. Even when everything around her screamed that she should give up, she held on to hope like a lifeline. She believed that somewhere beyond the pain, beyond the mockery, beyond the empty years, there was a God who saw her, a God who heard, a God who cared. When they arrived at the sanctuary in Shiloh, the air was thick with the smell of burning incense and roasted meat. Families gathered around tables, celebrating with full hearts and full bellies. Laughter rang out from every corner. Children ran between the tents, their joy uncontained. But Peninnah couldn't join them. She couldn't pretend. While everyone else feasted and sang, she slipped away unnoticed. Her feet carried her toward the entrance of the tabernacle, that sacred space where heaven felt closer than anywhere else on earth. And there, in the stillness, she broke. All the years of holding herself together came crashing down at once. Tears poured from her eyes like a dam that had finally given way. Her shoulders shook. Her breath came in ragged gasps. But she didn't cry out loud. She didn't scream or wail. Instead, her lips moved silently, forming words that only God could hear. Her prayer wasn't polite or rehearsed. It was raw. It was desperate. It was the cry of a soul that had reached its limit. Peninnah's voice was barely a whisper, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 storms. She spoke directly to heaven, bypassing every wall, every doubt, every voice that had ever told her she wasn't enough. Lord of heaven's armies, she breathed, if you would just look at me. If you would see the pain of your servant and remember me. If you would give me a son, I promise you, I will give him back to you for all the days of his life. No razor will ever touch his head. He will be yours completely. This wasn't just a prayer for a child. This was something far deeper. Peninnah wasn't asking for a baby to fill the emptiness in her home or to silence the mockery of Peninnah. She was offering God a deal that would cost her everything. She was saying that even if it meant giving up the very thing she longed for most, she would do it. Because this wasn't about her anymore. This was about purpose. This was about taking her deepest wound and allowing God to transform it into something that would outlive her. From across the room, an elderly man watched her with confusion. His name was Eli, and he was the high priest of Israel. He had served in that sanctuary for decades, listening to countless prayers, witnessing endless sacrifices. But what he saw in Anna troubled him. Her lips moved rapidly, but no sound came out. Her body swayed slightly, as if she might collapse at any moment. To his aging eyes, she looked like a woman who had drunk too much wine, lost in some kind of intoxicated stupor. He approached her with stern disapproval written across his weathered face. "Woman," he said sharply, "how long will you keep getting drunk? Put away your wine and sober yourself up." His words were meant to correct what he believed was disgraceful behavior in a holy place. But Anna lifted her head, and when she looked at him, Eli saw something that made him pause. Her eyes weren't clouded with wine. They were clear, though filled with an ocean of tears. "No, my lord," she said softly but firmly, "I am not drunk. I am a woman with a deeply troubled soul. I have been pouring out my heart before the Lord. Don't mistake your servant for a worthless woman. I have been praying out of my great anguish and grief." In that moment, everything shifted. Eli's expression softened. The harshness melted away, replaced by something gentler, something that looked almost like understanding. He had seen many people come to this place seeking God, but there was something about Anna's brokenness that touched him. He could see that this wasn't about personal gain or selfish desire. This was a woman at the end of herself, laying everything bare before the Creator. He lifted his hand in blessing and spoke words that would echo through eternity. "Go in peace," he said, his voice now warm with compassion. "And may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him." Anna's tears didn't stop immediately, but something inside her changed in that instant. It was as if a heavy stone had been lifted from her chest. She didn't walk away with a child in her arms. She didn't receive a vision or hear an audible voice from heaven. But she left that place with something far more precious than she had arrived with. She left with peace. The kind of peace that comes when you know, deep in your bones, that you have been heard. That your cry didn't disappear into empty air. That somewhere beyond what you can see, wheels are already in motion. When she returned to Elkanah and the others, her face was different. The crushing sadness that had weighed on her for years seemed lighter somehow. She ate. She smiled. And for the first time in what felt like forever, hope dared to whisper in her heart again. Months passed like pages turning in a story that had finally found its purpose. And then it happened. Anna felt the first flutter of life within her, a sensation so profound it stole her breath away. After years of emptiness, after countless nights of tears soaked into her pillow, there was life growing inside her. A miracle wrapped in flesh and bone. A promise taking shape beneath her heart. When her son was born, the moment was indescribable. The baby's first cry rang out like a trumpet announcing victory. Anna held him close, feeling his warmth against her chest, his tiny fingers curling around hers. Every breath he took was a testament to the faithfulness of God. She named him Samuel, which means asked of the Lord, because he was exactly that. He was the answer to a prayer that had been whispered in desperation and received in grace. For the first few years of his life, Anna poured everything into him. She sang to him. She told him stories. She watched him take his first steps and spoke his first words. Every laugh, every milestone, every precious moment was treasured like gold, because she knew, she had always known. This joy was temporary. This gift had always been meant for something greater than her own happiness. When Samuel was still very young, perhaps 3 or 4 years old, Anna knew the time had come. She dressed him in his best clothing, packed a small bag with his belongings, and prepared her heart for what she had promised. Elkanah traveled with her back to Shiloh, back to the sanctuary where it had all begun. With every step closer to that holy place, Anna's heart felt like it was being torn in two. But beneath the pain was something stronger, a resolve. A certainty that what she was doing was right, even though it cost her everything. They found Eli in the same spot where Anna had once knelt in tears. He was older now, his movements slower, but his eyes still carried wisdom. Anna approached him with Samuel's small hand clasped tightly in hers. She took a deep breath and spoke with a voice that trembled but did not break. "Do you remember me, my lord? I am the woman who stood here years ago, praying with all my heart. I asked the Lord for this child, and he gave me exactly what I requested. So now I am giving him back to the Lord. For as long as he lives, he will belong to God." And then she did the hardest thing she had ever done. She let go of his hand. She watched as Eli placed his aged hand on Samuel's small head. She saw her son, her miracle, her answered prayer, standing there in robes that would soon replace the ones she had sewn for him. She would return home to empty arms once again, but this time the emptiness would be different. This time it would be filled with purpose. Anna didn't weep as she had before. Instead, she worshipped. Her voice rose in a song of praise that flowed from the deepest parts of her soul. "My heart rejoices in the Lord," she sang. "There is no one holy like the Lord. There is no rock like our God." She praised him not because her circumstances were easy, but because he had taken her brokenness and turned it into something beautiful. He had taken her pain and given it meaning. Samuel grew up in that sacred place, surrounded by the presence of God in ways most children never experience. While other boys his age played in fields and learned their father's trades, Samuel learned to tend the lamps that burned continually before the Lord. He learned the songs of worship. He learned to listen for the voice of heaven. His childhood was not ordinary, but it was exactly what God had planned. And God did not forget the boy who had been given back to him. One night, when Samuel was still young, lying on his mat near the ark of God, he heard someone call his name. "Samuel," the voice said clearly. The boy jumped up and ran to Eli, thinking the old priest had summoned him. But Eli hadn't called. This happened 3 times before Eli realized what was happening. His heart must have skipped a beat when understanding dawned. God was speaking directly to this child. The Lord himself was calling Samuel by name. Eli instructed the boy with trembling hands. "Go and lie down," he said. "And if he calls you again, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" So Samuel returned to his place, and when the voice came again, he responded with the words Eli had taught him. That night marked the beginning of something extraordinary. God spoke to Samuel with a clarity that stunned even the high priest. Messages came through this young boy that would shake the nation of Israel to its core. Samuel grew in wisdom and in favor with both God and people. He became the last and greatest of the judges of Israel, a prophet whose words never fell to the ground unfulfilled. He would one day stand before kings and anoint them with oil. He would speak truth to power without fear. He would lead a nation through some of its darkest and most pivotal moments. And all of it, every bit of that extraordinary life, began with a mother's prayer in a moment of absolute desperation. Anna would visit her son every year, bringing him a new robe she had made with her own hands. Each time she saw him, he was taller, stronger, wiser. And each time, she was reminded that her sacrifice had not been in vain. God blessed her with more children after Samuel, filling her home with the laughter and chaos she had once longed for. But Samuel would always be special. He would always be the one who proved that God hears the prayers of the broken. This story isn't just about a woman who wanted a baby. It's about what happens when we take our deepest pain and offer it back to God. It's about the courage it takes to believe when everything says you shouldn't. It's about the power of a prayer prayed in secret, in tears, with a heart that refuses to give up. Anna didn't just receive a son. She gave the world a prophet. She changed the course of history because she dared to believe that her suffering had purpose. Wherever you are right now, whatever emptiness you're carrying, whatever prayer you've whispered 1,000 times without seeing an answer, remember Anna. Remember that your tears are not wasted, your pain is not meaningless, and your prayers are never lost in the silence. Sometimes God's greatest miracles begin in our darkest moments. Sometimes the thing we surrender becomes the thing that changes everything. Anna prayed in her brokenness, and God didn't just answer her. He used her story to remind us all that nothing is too hard for Him, no prayer is too small, no hurt is beyond His healing, and no surrender is ever without reward.